The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched 300 meters high, its walls carved from crystal that had existed before most species learned to walk upright. Today, those ancient walls would witness something new. Today, humanity asked to join. Ambassador Chun stood at the center of the circular chamber, surrounded by beings that made humans look plain and simple. The Xantharians floated in meditation pods, their three eyes glowing with thoughts that moved slower than glaciers. The Cravathi warriors sat in their honor seats, scales gleaming like polished steel, each one a veteran of 1,000 ceremonial battles. The Synthesians hummed with calculation, their mechanical bodies processing data faster than any biological mind could follow. Above them all sat High Chancellor Vexanath, a Xantharian who had guided the council for 600 years. His voice echoed through the chamber like distant thunder. Humanity, we have reviewed your application. We have studied your world. We have seen your history. Chun waited. She had learned patience in her 70 years, though right now her heart pounded like a drum. Your species is violent, Vexanath continued. You have fought each other for your entire existence. Your weapons are primitive. Your politics are chaos. You have no concept of honor in combat. One of the Cravathi stood. His name was Dexal, and he commanded the Eastern fleets. I have reviewed their military records, he said, his voice a deep rumble. They fight with no structure. They break treaties. They use deception and tricks. This is not warfare. This is barbarism. Chun felt her jaw tighten but kept her face neutral. They had expected this. A Synthesian spoke next, its voice flat and perfect. Statistical analysis confirms chaos in human conflict patterns. Probability of successful integration, 14%. Recommendation: deny application. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Chun could feel the decision turning against Earth before she had spoken a single word. If I may address the council, she said, her voice clear and steady. Vexanath gestured permission. You're right about everything, Chun said. The chamber went quiet. We are violent. We have fought each other forever. Our weapons are simple compared to yours. And we absolutely understand that our ways are different from yours. She took a breath. But we're also still here. Despite everything, humanity survived. We survived ice ages and plagues. We survived our own worst impulses. We made it to space. And now we're asking to join something bigger than ourselves. Pretty words, Dexal said. But words don't prove capability. The galaxy is dangerous, Ambassador. There are threats you cannot imagine. Then test us, Chun replied. The chamber erupted in surprised murmurs. Vexanath raised a hand for silence. You wish to be tested? The High Chancellor asked. Yes. Give us a task. If we fail, we accept your judgment. If we succeed, we've earned our place. The council members looked at each other. Finally, Vexanath spoke again. Very well. We will grant humanity provisional status. You will be assigned to the Outer Reaches, Sector 7. Chun felt her stomach drop. She had studied the sectors. Sector 7 was a nightmare. Dexal noticed her reaction and showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. You know what dwells there, don't you, Ambassador? The Vorgash Horde, Chun said quietly. Indeed, the Vorgash are raiders. Pirates. They respect only strength. For 200 years, they have plagued that sector. No species has been able to drive them out permanently. They follow no laws, no conventions. They are the closest thing your species will find to what you call barbarians. You will establish a colony in Sector 7, Vexanath declared. You will maintain it for 1 standard year. If you survive, we will revisit your application. Chun understood what they were really saying. They expected humanity to fail. They expected the Vorgash to destroy the colony, to teach humans a lesson about their place in the universe. This wasn't a test. It was a polite execution. "We accept," she said. 3 weeks later, Commander Thexal arrived on Earth to deliver the official assignment and provide what he called necessary military education. He brought with him a data core containing 10,000 years of galactic military doctrine. General Maria Santos met him at the landing site in Colorado. She was a small woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. Thexal towered over her, nearly 3 meters of muscle and scales. "General Santos," he said, his translator making his words smooth. "I am here to teach your species how to fight properly. The conventions of warfare are ancient and sacred. If you hope to survive against the Vorgash, you must learn them." Santos looked up at him and smiled. It was not a warm smile. "Commander, I appreciate you coming all this way, but we'll handle the Vorgash our own way." Thexal made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Your way? You have never fought aliens before. You don't understand what's coming. The Vorgash are savage, yes, but even they follow certain rules. There are proper formations, proper challenges, proper ways to conduct a siege. Proper ways to lose, you mean?" Santos said. "Excuse me? I read your data core, Commander. I read about all these proper battles. You know what I noticed? They last forever. Months, years, thousands dead on both sides. All because everyone follows the same playbook." She crossed her arms. "We don't have time for proper. We have 1 year to prove ourselves." Thexal felt something he rarely experienced: doubt. "You cannot simply ignore 10,000 years of military tradition." "Watch us," Santos said. "We've been fighting each other since we lived in caves. We learned every dirty trick, every ambush, every psychological game. We learned how to win when we were outnumbered and outgunned. That's what we're good at, Commander. Not honor, not tradition, winning." "The Council will not accept such barbarism," Thexal warned. Santos shrugged. "The Council put us in Sector 7 expecting us to die. They didn't say we had to die honorably." 6 months later, the colony of New Harmony was established on a world the galactic charts called Kepler 442b. 5,000 civilians and 2,000 military personnel built homes, farms, and industries. To the rest of the galaxy, they looked vulnerable and naive. The Vorgash thought so too. When Warlord Gracchus received reports of the new human colony, he gathered his raiding fleet with eager anticipation. A new species meant new plunder, new slaves, new territory. His warriors prepared their weapons and painted their honor markings. They followed all the proper procedures for an invasion. They sent the formal challenge. They approached the planet with flags displayed. They waited the appropriate 3 days for the defenders to prepare. On the 4th day, they attacked. It would be the worst mistake the Vorgash had ever made. Warlord Grocus watched the planet below with satisfaction. His fleet of 60 ships hung in orbit around New Harmony like predators circling wounded prey. The humans had responded to his challenge with silence, which meant they accepted their fate. Good. Sometimes the new species tried to bargain or beg. This would be cleaner. "Deploy the landing parties," Gracchus ordered. Standard formation. "We take the northern settlement first, as is proper." His second in command, a scarred veteran named Drix, studied the scanner readings. "Lord Gracchus, the orbital defenses are minimal. Only 3 small satellites. And I detect no military formations on the ground. No shield walls, no artillery positions, no massed troops. They have no idea how to fight a real war," Gracchus said with amusement. "They will learn before they die." The landing craft descended through the atmosphere according to the ancient protocols. They landed in the designated combat zones, flat areas well away from civilian centers where honorable battle could take place. Gracchus himself led the first wave, 3,000 warriors strong. They emerged from their ships in perfect formation, weapons ready, banners flying. The morning sun lit their armor beautifully. This was how war should be conducted, Gracchus thought. With dignity and structure. They waited for the human forces to arrive and take their positions. That was how it worked. Both sides assembled. Commanders met to discuss terms, and then battle began. They waited an hour. No humans came. Perhaps they are cowards, Drix suggested. Hiding in their settlement? Then we advance and draw them out, Gracchus decided. Forward march. Combat pace. Maintain formation. The Vorgash army began moving toward the nearest human settlement, 5 kilometers away. They marched in ordered ranks, drums beating the rhythm of war. This was tradition. This was honor. Then the first mine exploded. The blast tore through the front ranks, killing 17 warriors instantly. Gracchus stared in shock. What kind of weapon was this? It had been buried in the ground, hidden, with no honor marker to warn of its presence. Defensive formation. He shouted. Another explosion. Then another. His warriors scattered as the invisible weapons detonated beneath their feet. Gracchus had never seen anything like it. How could you fight an enemy you couldn't see? Reform ranks. Drix bellowed. Back to the landing zone. They never made it. Gunfire erupted from somewhere in the distance. Not the energy weapons that announced themselves with bright colors and sounds. These were projectile weapons, firing from so far away that Gracchus couldn't even see the shooters. His warriors fell, struck by bullets that traveled faster than sound. Where are they? Gracchus roared. Where are the humans? A warrior beside him suddenly collapsed, a hole in his skull. The shot had come from somewhere in the hills, over a kilometer away. Impossible range for traditional weapons. Then the sky filled with buzzing sounds. Gracchus looked up to see small flying machines, no bigger than his hand, swarming overhead. They dropped small objects that exploded on impact. His warriors fired at them, but there were too many, and they were too fast. Underground. Someone shouted. Gracchus spun around to see humans emerging from hidden tunnels in the ground, right in the middle of his formation. They wore strange patterns that made them hard to see, and they fired their weapons with brutal efficiency before disappearing back into the tunnels. This wasn't battle. This was chaos. Retreat to the ships, Gracchus ordered. But when they reached the landing zones, half their spacecraft were burning. The humans had somehow sabotaged them during the attack. The remaining ships lifted off in panic, abandoning warriors on the ground. Gracchus made it aboard his command ship, his mind reeling. In less than 2 hours, he had lost over 1,000 warriors. He hadn't even seen most of the enemy. They had broken every rule of warfare he knew. Get us out of orbit, he commanded. Now, as they climbed toward space, his communication officer spoke urgently. Lord Gracchus, I'm receiving strange transmissions. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. What kind of transmissions? Video, my lord. Of all warriors. Dying. Gracchus pulled up the feed and felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. The video showed his. Warriors being killed in dozens of ways. Shot from hiding. Blown apart by hidden explosives. Ambushed in the dark. Some showed Vorgash prisoners being interrogated, begging for mercy. Others showed the bodies of his soldiers arranged in patterns, messages for any other Vorgash who might come. This is psychological warfare, his science officer said, voice shaking. They're trying to break our will to fight. It's working, Drix muttered. Gracchus stared at the planet shrinking behind them. He had raided hundreds of worlds. He had won countless battles. But he had never fought an enemy like this. An enemy that refused to fight fairly. An enemy that seemed to know exactly what would terrify a Vorgash warrior most. Send word to the Horde, he said quietly. Tell them New Harmony is forbidden. Any captain who lands there will face my personal wrath. When news of the Vorgash defeat reached the Galactic Council 2 weeks later, the chamber erupted in argument. "This is unacceptable," a Xantharian philosopher shouted. "Humanity has violated every convention of warfare. Hidden explosives? Invisible soldiers? Psychological torture? These are not the actions of a civilized species." Dexal stood at his station, reading the battle reports with an expression that none of his fellow Krevithi could interpret. "They won," he said simply. "That's not the point." The Xantharian continued. "Victory without honor is meaningless. They fought like animals. They fought like survivors," Dexal corrected. "The Vorgash are raiders who follow minimal honor codes. Humanity adapted their tactics accordingly." A Synthesian's voice cut through the noise. "We must address the mathematical reality. If humanity continues to employ these tactics, our probability models predict they could defeat any conventional military force in the galaxy within one standard decade. This represents a destabilizing factor." High Chancellor Vexanath raised his hand for silence. His 3 eyes glowed with deep thought. "Ambassador Chun, your species has defended the colony. But at what cost to galactic order?" Chun stepped forward. She had been waiting for this. "High Chancellor, I have a question for the Council. Did you expect us to die honorably or to survive?" "That is not the point," Vexanath said. "That's exactly the point," Chun replied, her voice sharp. "You put us in Sector 7 hoping we'd fail. You wanted us to learn our place. Well, we learned something different. We learned that your conventions of warfare weren't designed for victory. They were designed for control." The chamber went silent. "The Vorgash have raided that sector for 200 years," Chun continued. "How many lives lost? How many colonies destroyed? All because everyone fights by the same rules, so no one ever really wins. We've been on that planet for 6 months, and the Vorgash won't come near us now. Not because we're honorable, because we're terrifying." "You are dangerous," Vexanath said coldly. "We're effective," Chun corrected. "There's a difference." Before anyone could respond, an aide rushed into the chamber and whispered something to one of the junior council members. The news spread quickly through the room. Dexal spoke first. "Is it true? 3 species have sent requests to humanity?" Chun pulled up a holographic display. "The Lyrium, the Kaltros, and the Marin. All 3 are being oppressed or attacked. All 3 have asked Earth for help." "This is highly irregular," Vexanath said. "The Council handles all requests for military aid. The Council takes years to decide," Chun said. "The Lyrium have weeks before the Kresh Empire wipes them out. You want to see what humanity does when we fight without honor? Fine. Watch what we do when we fight for someone who can't fight back." She turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, the Council dissolved into chaos. The Lyrium homeworld of Paznell was burning. From orbit, General Santos could see 16 cities aflame. The Kresh Empire had been systematic in their destruction, following all proper protocols for what they called territorial cleansing. They had filed the correct paperwork with the Galactic Council. They had given the Lyrium notice. Everything was legal according to the conventions. Everything except the mass murder. "How long until the Council votes on intervention?" asked Captain Rodriguez, Santos' second in command. 4 months, Santos replied. "Maybe 5. The Lyrium don't have 4 months, I know." Santos studied the tactical display. The Kresh had orbital superiority, ground forces on every continent, and supply lines that stretched back to their empire's core worlds. By every measure of galactic warfare, they were unbeatable. But Santos didn't fight galactic warfare. "Deploy the infiltration teams," she ordered. "Operation Shadowfall begins now. Across human space, special operations units mobilized." These weren't the soldiers who held ground or fought in formation. These were the ones who disappeared in the night and made governments fall by sunrise. Earth had spent centuries perfecting these dark arts, and now the galaxy would see what humanity had learned. The first Crash commander died in his sleep, poisoned by a substance his doctors had never seen. No sign of entry. No sign of struggle. Just death. The second died when his vehicle exploded on a road he had traveled safely for months. The bomb had been placed with such precision that only his command car was destroyed. Everyone else in the convoy survived to tell the story. The third simply vanished. His bodyguards found his quarters empty one morning, and he was never seen again. Within a week, the Crash military command structure was in chaos. Officers refused to sleep in their own beds. They traveled in unmarked vehicles on random routes. They doubled and tripled their security. None of it helped. The humans were ghosts, striking without warning and disappearing without trace. But Santos wasn't just killing commanders. That was too simple. Her intelligence teams had infiltrated Crash communication networks. They released fabricated evidence that one general was plotting against another. They altered supply records to make it look like officers were stealing from their own troops. They spread rumors, created paranoia, turned allies into enemies. The Crash Empire began to collapse from within. On the ground, human teams trained lyrium resistance fighters. Not in the honorable warfare of the galaxy, but in the brutal tactics of insurgency. How to make explosives from common materials. How to sabotage infrastructure. How to hit and run. How to make an occupying force bleed until they couldn't afford to stay. Delirium were naturally peaceful. But even peaceful people could learn to fight when their children were dying. 3 weeks after Santos arrived, the Crash began their withdrawal. They claimed it was a strategic repositioning. Everyone knew the truth. They were running from an enemy they couldn't understand or defeat. When the last Crash ship left orbit, Delirium people wept with relief and gratitude. They had been days from extinction. Now they were free. The Galactic Council watched all of this with growing alarm. Dexal sat in an emergency session, listening to his fellow council members debate what to do about humanity. The Xantharians wanted immediate expulsion. The Synthesians ran probability models that all showed the same result. If humanity continued, the entire balance of galactic power would shift. They must be stopped, declared Chancellor Vexnoth, before they destabilize everything we have built. They saved an entire species from genocide, Dexal countered. While we debated and filed paperwork, they violated every convention. A Xantharian shouted. They used assassination, sabotage, and psychological warfare. These are not the tools of civilization. No, Dexal agreed quietly. They are the tools of survival. Perhaps we have forgotten the difference. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Dexal watched them argue and felt something shift in his understanding. For his entire life, he had believed in the honor of the Crevathi. He had followed the conventions without question. He had fought in dozens of ceremonial battles that lasted months and solved nothing. Then, he had watched humanity end a war in 3 weeks. The vote was called. Should humanity be expelled from galactic society and potentially designated as a hostile force? Before the vote could proceed, alarms blared throughout the station. Every screen in the chamber suddenly displayed the same message. Incoming transmission. Priority 1 source, Earth. General Santos appeared on the screens. She stood in what looked like a command center, surrounded by displays showing military deployments across human space. Honorable Council, she began, her voice calm but firm. I understand you're voting on Earth status. Before you do, I think you should know what we've learned in the past months. She gestured, and the screen split to show data streams. We've been analyzing your conventions of warfare. Do you know how many people have died in honorable conflicts in the past 10 years? 847 million. Most of them civilians caught in wars that drag on because both sides follow the same predictable playbook. Santos pulled up more data. In that same period, your council has authorized exactly 3 humanitarian interventions. 3. While genocides proceed legally because the proper paperwork was filed. You have no right to lecture us. Vexanath said coldly. You're absolutely right, Santos agreed. We're newcomers. We're violent. We're uncivilized. But in 6 months, we've ended 4 conflicts with a total of 3,000 casualties, all military. 0 civilian deaths. Delirium are alive. The Caltros are free. The Marin are no longer enslaved. She leaned forward. So here's my question, Chancellor. What matters more? Fighting honorably or saving lives? Your tactics are barbaric, as Antharian insisted. Our tactics are effective, Santos corrected. And they're targeted. We don't kill civilians. We don't destroy cities. We go after the people responsible, and we do it quickly. Compare that to your honorable siege of Terminus 4 that lasted 18 months and leveled everything. Lexal found himself nodding. She was right. When had following the rules become more important than achieving justice? The Council will not accept this, Vexanath declared. Then don't, Santos said simply. Expel us. Make us your enemy if you want. But know this. 17 species have already asked for our help. 17 species that your council ignored because helping them wasn't convenient or didn't follow proper procedure. They don't care about honor, Chancellor. They care about surviving. She paused, letting that sink in. You can vote us out, but you can't vote away the fact that your system is broken. You've created a galaxy where genocide is legal and defending yourself efficiently is barbaric. We're not asking you to become like us. We're asking you to remember what all these rules were supposed to protect in the first place. People's lives. The transmission ended. The chamber sat in stunned silence. Finally, Dexal stood. I change my vote, he announced. I vote for integration. You can't. Another Cravathi warrior objected. They have no honor. They have something better, Dexal replied. They have results. And they have the courage to do what's right, even when it's not proper. He looked around the chamber at beings who had led the galaxy for thousands of years. When did we become so afraid of change that we would rather let people die than admit our ways might not be perfect? This is treason against everything we stand for, the Cravathi elder hissed. No, Dexal said. This is evolution. And if we're too proud to evolve, we deserve to become obsolete. He wasn't the only one. Across the chamber, younger members of various species began standing. Not many, but enough to change everything. The vote was called again. This time, it was much closer. Chancellor Vexanath watched the numbers appear and felt the weight of 10,000 years pressing down on him. The conventions had kept order for so long. But Santos was right about one thing. Order without justice was just tyranny with better paperwork. The vote is tied, he announced finally, which means the decision falls to me as Chancellor. The chamber held its breath. Vexanath closed his 3 eyes and thought about all the species that had died while the council debated. He thought about Delirium, who would be extinct if not for humanity's intervention. He thought about what leadership really meant. I vote for a new path, he said quietly. Humanity will remain in the council, but not as they are. He opened his eyes. They will train a new division, a division that fights for protection and liberation only. Their tactics will be classified and restricted. In exchange, humanity gains full membership and agrees to oversight. This is compromise, someone objected. Yes, Vexanath agreed. That's what wisdom looks like. The trial took place 3 months later, though everyone knew it wasn't really about judgment anymore. It was about theater, about making the old guard feel like they still had control while the galaxy changed around them. General Santos stood in the center of the council chamber, alone. They had summoned her to answer for crimes against the conventions of warfare. Behind her, in the gallery, sat representatives from 23 species that humanity had helped. The number had grown since her last appearance. Chancellor Vexenoth began the proceedings with formal language about honor and tradition. Santos listened patiently. She had learned that sometimes you had to let people say their piece before you could change their minds. General Santos, Vexenoth finally said, "You stand accused of conducting warfare in a manner that violates galactic law. How do you answer?" "Guilty," Santos said simply. "Of all of it." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. They had expected denials, justifications, legal arguments. Not a confession. You admit to assassination, sabotage, psychological warfare, and the use of banned weapons? Vexenoth asked. "I admit to winning," Santos replied. "And I admit to saving lives. If your laws say those things are crimes, then your laws are the problem, not me." An older Cravathi warrior stood, his scales gray with age. "You speak of honor as if it means nothing. But without honor, what separates us from animals?" Santos turned to face him. "Results, intent, morality." She gestured to the gallery. "Ask the Lyrium if they care that we fought without honor. Ask the Caltros if they prefer we followed the conventions while they died. Ask the Marin if honor matters more than their freedom." A young Lyrium stepped forward from the gallery. Her name was Sarah, and she had lost 3 children to the creche before humanity arrived. "May I speak?" Vexenoth looked surprised but nodded permission. "I know nothing of your conventions," Sarah said, her voice soft but steady. "I only know that my people were dying. The council said they would help us. They said they needed time to vote, to follow proper procedure. My youngest child died while we waited for your proper procedure." Tears ran down her face, but her voice never wavered. "The humans came. They didn't ask permission. They didn't debate. They fought for us like we mattered. Like our lives were worth breaking your rules." She looked directly at the Cravathi elder. "You want to know what separates you from animals? Animals don't let children die because the paperwork isn't filed correctly." The chamber went silent. Santos saw several council members look away, unable to meet Sarah's eyes. Dexal stood from his seat. He had been quiet during the proceedings, but now he walked down to stand beside Santos. The gesture shocked everyone. A Cravathi commander standing with the accused was unheard of. "I have fought in 43 battles," Dexal announced. "All of them honorable. All of them following the conventions perfectly." He paused. "And all of them pointless. We fought for months, lost thousands, and in the end nothing changed." The enemy regrouped. The conflict continued. Because both sides knew the rules, victory was impossible. He looked at his fellow Cravathi. "Humanity taught me something. Honor without purpose is just pride. We've been so focused on fighting correctly that we forgot what we were fighting for." "Traitor," the elder Cravathi spat. "No," Vexal replied calmly. "I'm a warrior who finally learned the difference between battle and war. Battle is about honor. War is about winning. Humanity wins because they understand that." More council members shifted uncomfortably. Santos could see the division spreading. The younger species looked interested, even excited. The older ones looked afraid. A synthesian spoke, its mechanical voice cutting through the tension. "We have completed new probability analysis. If the galaxy adopts hybrid warfare doctrine, combining traditional honor combat with human tactical methods, estimated reduction in civilian casualties, 68%. Estimated reduction in conflict duration, 72%. Estimated increase in successful peacekeeping operations, 81%. You're suggesting we become like them? A Xantharian asked, horrified. We're suggesting adaptation, the Synthesian replied. Species that refuse to adapt become extinct. This is mathematical certainty. Vexanath raised his hand for silence. The question before us is simple. Do we cling to 10,000 years of tradition, or do we evolve? He looked at Santos. General, if we were to accept your methods, what would you ask in return? Santos had been waiting for this. Full council membership for humanity, and the creation of a new military division trained in our tactics, but with strict rules of engagement. They operate only for defensive operations and liberation missions. Never conquest. Never aggression. The galaxy keeps its traditional forces for those who want them, but now you also have a tool that works. Who would command this division? Vexanath asked. Joint command. One human, one galactic officer. Both must agree on every operation. Santos looked at Dexal. I'd nominate Commander Dexal as the first galactic commander. Dexal's eyes widened in surprise. Then he nodded slowly. I accept. This is madness, the Elder Cravathi said. You're giving barbarians legitimacy. No, Vexanath replied. We're acknowledging that the galaxy has changed. We can change with it or be left behind. He stood, his ancient form radiating authority. I call for a vote. Not on General Santos's guilt, which she has admitted, but on the future. Do we accept humanity's proposal and begin a new era, or do we expel them and continue as we have? The vote took an hour. When it finished, the result was displayed for all to see. 58% in favor, 42% against. It is decided, Vexanath announced. Humanity is granted full council membership. The Special Operations Division is hereby created, and the conventions of warfare will be amended to acknowledge alternative tactical doctrines. The chamber erupted in noise, some cheering, some protesting. Santos just stood quietly, feeling the weight of what they had accomplished. Earth had gone from outsiders to game changers in less than a year. After the session ended, Dexal found Santos in one of the station's observation decks. She stood looking out at the stars, a small human woman who had helped reshape galactic civilization. That was impressive, Dexal said. The way you handled the trial. It wasn't about the trial, Santos replied. It was about showing them a different way. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Dexal asked the question that had been bothering him since the vote. Tell me honestly, General. If the Council had voted to expel humanity, to make you an enemy of the galaxy, what would you have done? Santos smiled, and it wasn't a friendly smile. She pulled out a small data tablet and handed it to him. Dexal looked at the screen and felt his blood run cold. It showed complete tactical analyses of every Council military installation. Fleet positions updated in real time. Leadership profiles with detailed vulnerability assessments. Supply chain weaknesses. Communication backdoors. Strategic strike plans that could decapitate Galactic Command in under 6 hours. Dexal couldn't find words. Preparation, Santos said quietly. We didn't know if the Council would accept us or attack us. So we prepared for both. That's what we do, Commander. We hope for peace but prepare for war. Always. She took the tablet back. There's a human saying, if you want peace, prepare for war. But there's a part people forget. You prepare so well that the other side realizes fighting you isn't worth it. That's the real victory. Not winning the war, but making sure it never starts. Dexal stared at her. You would have actually done it. Attacked the entire Council. Only if you attacked us first, Santos corrected. We don't start fights, Commander. But we always finish them. That's the most brutal tactic of all. Never entering a conflict unless you've already figured out how to win it. She looked back at the stars. Do you know what the real difference is between human warfare and galactic warfare? You fight for honor. We fight to survive. Honor is a luxury. Survival is a necessity. And when you spend 10,000 years fighting each other, you learn every trick, every strategy, every psychological edge. We brought that experience to the galaxy. Some would call that terrifying, Dexal said. Some would be right, Santos agreed. But we're not your enemy, Commander. We're your ally. And now that we're on the same side, the galaxy just became a much safer place for everyone who can't defend themselves. Dexal thought about that. About the Lyrium who were alive because humanity didn't wait for permission. About the Caltros who were free because humanity didn't follow the rules. About all the species that might be saved because the galaxy finally had a tool that worked. I think I'm beginning to understand, he said. Good, Santos replied. Because you and I have a lot of work to do. There's a dozen conflicts out there that have been dragging on for years. Time to show the galaxy what happens when you combine Crevathy honor with human brutality. She offered her hand. After a moment, Dexal took it. The gesture was very human, but it felt right somehow. Like they were sealing more than just a partnership. They were sealing a new future dot in the command center back on Earth. Admiral Chun watched the feed from the observation deck and allowed herself a small smile. Humanity had gambled everything on this moment. They had shown their teeth and their claws, but they had also shown their willingness to work within the system to change it. The galaxy would never be the same.